Good evening, world, and welcome to Haunting Season. Today, we're trying something just a little bit new. Each month, as we prepare for the show, Cody and I watch a ton of scary movies on theme with our fear of the month. But every time we start to bring them up in a regular episode, we barely have time to scratch the surface. So, we're trying out a horror movie review show. This month is all about grief and loss, and so you can't do a month on this topic without watching Hereditary. But a perfect companion piece that we've found is a little indie film called The Deeper You Dig. If you haven't seen it, please, for the love of grief, go watch these films. But first, here's our episode. Hereditary is one of the strongest, most comprehensive reflections of grief that I have ever seen in a film. It's the only time I've ever left the theater saying, I'm so glad that I saw that and I never ever want to see it again. This is one of the most disturbing, heartbreaking, and downright scary films ever made. But the through line is this beautiful and accurate depiction of what happens when a family experiences sudden and tragic loss. This is an important film, and I think it should be taught in schools. I think anyone who has the stomach for horror should try and muscle through it and look at the important themes here, because when you experience a shared trauma, it can hurt really bad, but it can also cause a lot of reflection and growth. Even the mighty forest needs to burn sometimes in order to sprout new life. But again, this movie is traumatic and will leave a lasting scar on you. But I think it's worth it. Do you, Cody?
I saw this because it came out with a little bit of buzz, and I saw it in the theater, and I was like kind of like in a fog for about 3 to 4 hours after the movie, where I was like, what did I experience? It was just so heavy and deep, and I was like, I don't think I'll ever, I don't know if I'll ever watch that movie again. It's kind of like Saving Private Ryan, where it's like, just once is enough. I don't really need to see this again, because it's just so, there's just a lot to it. And the performances, are just like, really, I don't know how Toni Collette didn't get nominated.
It's so hard for horror movies to get nominated for things. You just,
right.
You don't see it very often.
Yeah. But it's definitely a movie that, with dealing with grief and also trauma, and it really just nails it almost too perfectly.
Trauma in itself is traumatic, right? Like those words are literally the same. And then you add on top of that the horror of the obscure, of hauntings, of things that are somewhat supernatural. It just adds so many layers on top of the already difficult to get through movie. But for some reason with this one, it just works. The movie theater experience was really something else, because you felt like the people next to you had gone through war with you.
There was this silence that was throughout the entire theater. And then when the movie ended, and then people leaving, there was almost this, people kind of took a breath, and it was slow to get up, and it was just this real silence. It was almost like people coming from a funeral.
I just wonder what it's like for the filmmakers to be hearing people, whoa, what did you think of Hereditary? That trailer was so scary. Should I go see it?
That sells a movie in a second. I want to go see that. Maybe only once, but I will go see that.
I also feel like it was one of those movies that, they said this about The Exorcist. They said this about Paranormal Activity, that people in the theaters were having heart attacks in the Philippines, or, they had to rush people to the hospital, or,
seizures and things of that nature. Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember that kind of, and that was even a bigger selling point to me. It was oh, well, man, I gotta go see this.
And I think this film does a really great job, too, of bouncing around the different perspectives, because one thing that really stands out to me, and I won't give anything away here, but there's a moment where a character is in bed experiencing this shock from an event that happened, and it just sits on them when you can hear stuff happening in the background, but you just stay with that one character for that moment, and it's such a reality of what it feels like to be in deep depression or in shock from an event like that, where you are just focusing on surviving and nothing else exists. There's no eating food, there's no getting up and checking on what's happening outside. It's just exist, just survive.
Absolutely. So now, Joshua, the question is, would you recommend this film to somebody?
I would recommend that everyone who has the stomach for true scary horror watch this film once and then try to process it. And the good news is you would never have to watch it again. You just have to think about it the rest of your life because
Yeah,
I think about this all the time. But I do think there are benefits to this movie because like I said, the depiction of grief and the depiction of how grief and loss can rip a family to shreds is just so well represented in this movie. And if we don't talk about things like this, then there's no way of dealing with them when they happen to you.
I agree. I think it's just not like only just a great horror flick, but it's just also just a really well-made film, I believe.
Yeah. So with these movie review shows, I wanted to do back-to-back movies that somehow relate or antithesize each other. And I found the perfect pairing for Hereditary, and I texted it to Cody last night, and he watched it right away. The second film we're talking about today is The Deeper You Dig. I was looking for a scary movie to watch, and I did one of those rabbit hole things where you click on a movie and then you click on one of the suggestions, and before you know it, you're 2 miles into your exercise bike ride and still haven't put anything on the iPad. So I just clicked on one, so I had something to focus on, and was immediately taken in by The Deeper You Dig. This movie was so good that I biked 4 extra miles to keep watching. I pretended dinner was taking longer to make so I could keep watching. I did the dishes so that I could continue watching. Dude, this
Oscar
movie,
pick.
okay. So here's the setup. A new guy in town is here to flip a house. He's not much more than decent, I'd say, as a person. He's a heavy drinker looking for some quick money, and as he's driving drunk home, he accidentally kills the daughter of a local psychic and hides the body. Don't worry, this is all like set up for the movie. This is in the
Trailer,
written description.
Yeah, you see it,
Yeah. And so the deeper you dig into this film, the more horrifying it gets. The movie is scary, it's fun, and it's one of the more imaginative indie films that leans into some experimental cinematography and imagery. I don't want to say anything else because the twists and turns are literally amazing in this movie, and the ending surprised me more than once. There were multiple times during the ending where I was like, oh, so this is what's happening. Oh, so this is what's happening.
Lots of twists and turns. If you're a fan of weather, which we don't really have much of that out here in Southern California, that's the first thing that I really took in. Is I was like, oh my gosh, I miss the snow so much. I miss that the sound and watching the snow fall. And then I was also like, there was rain, and I was like, oh, rain. I remember what rain was like. I miss the rain so much. And then there's also a creek and a river, and I was like, oh, I miss the green. I miss all this. With the cinematography, that's what really kind of took my breath away. But then also there were female leads. It was this mother and daughter, and she had the mother had a very unique face, and they did a lot of everything was also, I felt like this, claustrophobic. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of everything is up really close on everybody's face.
That is kind of indicative sometimes of indie films because it means that you don't have to do so much set dressing, and you're relying more on your actors. So you spend the good money on your actors, you find a good environment, and then it's okay, how do we keep things simple? I did the same exact thing when I was filming my first feature, which we made for $10,000, which, if anyone knows anything about the movie industry, is just it's pocket change. So we shot the whole thing in one location with a certain set of actors, and we did wide shots and close-ups, and we didn't really have time to spend on medium shots, especially in an intimate, horrific movie like this that's really about what's happening in the minds of people, because like I said, the main female character is a psychic, and the guy who kills the kid obviously has to deal with that. So it's a very cerebral movie.
I'm not gonna spoil anything. That's our handshake agreement here. we will not send any spoilers. However, at certain points, I was like, well, is this for real? I think Josh is playing a joke on me.
Yes, and I found a way to explain it. So you know how the movie It, or the book It, plays off of fears, and the It can take on the form of the deepest fears of the kids, right? And that's what it uses to fuel itself and to hunt the children. When you unlock certain parts of horror, you get that extra room to go bizarre, right? And the fact that this woman is a psychic and evolved in the occult to begin with as a positive thing, there is always a darker side to that. And part of this movie is sort of a journey through the darker side of the occult through the eyes of a psychic. And so it gets, very, very psychedelic at times.
Yeah, because I was watching it with Jess. She was very into it. And I looked at her and she was like, wow, this is serious. And I was like, I don't know if it is. I don't know what's going on here. I think Josh is playing a joke on me. And then she was like, let's just keep watching. So I was like, all right. And then it goes on a different, like, a different journey. And then it changes and we're going down this like dark avenue. And just lots of journeys in like a short period of time. And you also have to give credit to like what you're saying about the budget is they somehow managed to do this. I think it is an indie low budget film, but somehow it feels like it can be big production, and they really utilized what they had and really made it shine.
Yeah, I feel really lucky that I accidentally stumbled across it while trying to find something to ride my bike to, because I haven't seen a single thing about this online. I haven't seen people recommending this movie on TikTok. It just was completely random that I found it, and it was such a treat. I didn't find it like terribly scary. To me, it felt like Hereditary's like younger sister. Like probably hasn't seen as much shit in life, so isn't as fucked up.
Yeah, it's a good way of putting it.
That's kind of how I felt, because it deals with similar themes. And you mentioned the strong female lead in this movie, and I want to say Hereditary also has that.
Oh yeah.
The mom in that movie is like, it just top level performance.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
We kind of got to wrap things up because we want these episodes to be a little bit shorter, and we don't want to give away too much of the movies. So we want you to keep watching movies with us because it's fun to review them. Here's a couple of movies that we're going to be watching this month that we'll do deeper dive reviews on. We are looking at Blue Ruin, La Llorona, the English version and the Spanish version, Dr. Sleep, Pet Cemetery, Babadook, We Are Still Here, Lake Mungo, Don't Look Now, Super Dark Times. Okay, I'm sure there will be a lot more. And the ones that we don't get to on this show, I will be reviewing on the Haunting Season TikTok, which, by the way, is all bonus content that you don't get to see here. If you have TikTok and you like our show, please go check it out. That's it for today. Thanks for watching, and tell us what you think. And if you want us to do more movie reviews like this, let's roll the credits, Edgar. Haunting Season was created by me, Joshua Sterling Bragg.
Produced by Greg Holtzman and Jessica Richmond.
And executive produced by Matt Gielen, Patrick James Lynch, and Ryan Gielen.
And is a joint production of Believe Limited and Matt Gielen.
This episode was written and hosted by Cody Dugan and Joshua Sterling Bragg.
It was edited by Colby Crow.
And select music in this episode was made exclusively for the podcast by North Innsbruck.
If you like our show, please subscribe on your favorite platform.
We have a video version of the show on YouTube and Facebook, and audio versions on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever else you listen to podcasts. Was that good? Oh boy.